The last thing you want to do is ruin your Army career. Whether you are going into the Army for 4 years, for 10 years, for 20 plus years, you don't want to ruin that experience, because then it's all for nothing. If you're trying to use that Army experience to get you a great career or to use it as a career itself and retire, you don't want it ruined because of your actions in the United States Army. And there are some things that you could possibly do in your Army career that could just completely ruin that. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. So stick around, because that starts right now. In your Army career, you want to be able to progress. You want to be able to get promoted. You want to be able to get new responsibilities, all that fun stuff. But there are certain things that you could do that could ruin that, but more importantly, could get you kicked out of the Army. And that's definitely going to ruin your Army career if you get kicked out of the Army. So I want to kind of let you know, right? For the most part, if you're trying to do a good job and try to keep your nose clean and everything, probably be just fine. But there are some pretty serious things that if you end up doing these things in your Army career, it's going to screw you over and you're probably going to get kicked out for it. So we need to dive right into it. And we're going to start off with the very first one, the most serious one. If while you're in the United States military, you get convicted of domestic violence, done. You're getting kicked out of the Army. The reason for that is because of what is known as the Lautenberg Amendment. That amendment, that kind of law type of thing, makes it to where anybody who is convicted of a domestic violence charge, like they actually got convicted of the domestic violence, they're not allowed to use a firearm, not allowed to have ammunition, not allowed to use a firearm. And if you can't use a firearm, can't hold a firearm, can't use ammunition, you're pretty useless to the United States military. So they got to kick you out. There's no point in keeping you if you can't have a rifle, you can't have a pistol, you can't have a weapon, can't have ammunition. No use to the military. Some people might think, well, why can't I just go and do some kind of administrative job or something like that? Well, guess what? All of them still carry rifles too in a combat zone. When, like, some people just think that, like, oh, if I'm working an office type of job, I don't do the combat stuff. Sort of, yeah, but you still have to be able to in the situation that it comes about. Because if you're in a certain situation where the base is under attack, you're moving from one position to another position, and your convoy gets ambushed, you need to be able to be a part of the battle to be able to help out. So everybody carries a weapon regardless. The only kind of exception to that is like a chaplain. A chaplain doesn't carry a weapon, and you can't just go and like, oh, I got convicted of a domestic violence charge, I'm just gonna convert to being a chaplain. That's not gonna work that way. So nonetheless, you can't just go and switch over to some administrative thing. You get convicted of a domestic violence charge, you're not allowed to have weapons, so you're no use to the military, so they're gonna kick you out of the military. Now, sort of related to that is if you were to get convicted of a felony, right? If you do some kind of crime that is considered a felony crime, right? Whether it's in the military, like on base, or you were having a great weekend and did something stupid and you got convicted of a felony because of those stupid actions, you're gonna be pretty useless to the military as well, because felons are not allowed to possess weapons and use weapons. So again, kind of going back to the same thing, you're kind of useless to the military. Typically, crimes that are felonies anyways are pretty serious crimes, and the military doesn't want you anyways. Even if it wasn't a case where like you could still own a weapon, usually for you to do a serious enough crime to be convicted of a felony is not the type of people they want in the United States military. So for the most part, they're gonna kick you out of the Army. So you commit something, right? Attempted murder, of course, is gonna be a pretty big one, but other things like robbery or whatever that may be considered a felony, your military career is over, your Army career is over, and you're gonna get kicked out. Also, don't think of this as like, oh, that's my easy way out of the military. You're screwing your life over. If that was your way to try to get out of the Army because you hate being in the Army, you're like, well, guess I'm just gonna go commit some domestic violence. Guess I'm gonna go commit a felony type of thing. Well, now you're probably screwed, and for the rest of your life, you're gonna be probably struggling for work because you have this on your record and you got a dishonorable discharge from the military. So I would not suggest that. Don't try to use any of these as like, oh, that's my ticket out of the Army. That's how I'm gonna get out of the Army because I hate being in the Army. No, definitely not. In fact, if that's what you're trying to do is get out of the military, get out of the Army, I have a little comprehensive guide here of how to mess with your NCOs and get away with it that could result in that. Except for this is just a notebook, so that obviously wouldn't work. But it's a fun little notebook, and you're gonna need to take notes in the Army. You should be taking notes right now, all right? Get yourself a cool notebook that I've got. I'll have some links down in the description box down below. These are printed by Amazon, shipped to you, so it's very convenient for you to get some cool military themed notebooks that I create. Helps support the channel, so check those out. Link in the description box down below. Now, I've actually got two more that I kind of want to really focus on. And for old school veterans, veterans from like, let's say probably prior to 2010 type of time frame, these would not have been necessarily a thing that would have gotten you kicked out of the Army, but they kind of are now. Now it's a little bit more stricter in the Army with certain things, and one of those is testing positive for drugs. You have to do a drug test in the Army all the time, right? There's multiple times that you'll have to do a drug test. Legally or technically, based on Army standards, the units are supposed to be testing the soldiers at least once a year, as far as every soldier in their unit should have done a drug test at least once a year. Now, it ends up happening to be that you test more often than that because they have to do a 10% drug test each month, and you could come up in multiple of those, and they can do even more than those 10%. If they want to do 100%, they want to do a 50%, they can do so. So typically you should be testing more than once a year type of thing. So if during one of those tests you come up hot on that drug test, you could potentially be getting kicked out of the Army. Now, like I said, for some of my veterans that maybe were in prior to like 2010 type of time frame, you probably have a lot of stories of soldiers you knew that did not get kicked out of the Army for testing positive on drugs, and in fact just got knocked down to like E1, got reduced in rank type of thing, because yes, they were a little bit more relaxed on it back in those days. They would allow soldiers to probably stay in the military even if they tested positive for drugs, sometimes even more than once tested positive for drugs, and then reduce them in rank. There were soldiers I had in my units that were in that situation where they tested positive for marijuana or something along those lines and ended up getting knocked down from an E4 down to an E1 and had a bunch of extra duty they had to do, but they didn't get kicked out of the Army. That is not quite the case in the Army today. Today, they're a little bit more strict. Can that still happen? Yes, but it is a smaller chance now that you will just get reduced in rank, and a bigger chance that you might get possibly kicked out of the Army. It really is gonna be up to the leadership's discretion, but in the cases I've seen since 2010, the higher chance is that you're getting kicked out of the Army. Now, if you were a great soldier and you messed up, you tried drugs once at a party or something like that, maybe your leadership is gonna be a little bit more lenient with you. They're gonna be like, hey, this is usually a pretty good soldier. He screwed up this one time. We're gonna reduce him in rank to teach him a lesson type of thing, but we're not gonna kick him out. But if you were a soldier that maybe always had some problems, right? NCOs said that, hey, it's hard to get you to do your job, whatever type of thing, then they might lean more in the direction of kicking soldiers out, as that is the higher percentage of people that they're doing. They're the higher percentage that you're probably gonna get kicked out of the Army, with a lower percentage that you might get to stay. That used to be reversed prior to 2010, but now it's gone the other way in today's Army. So test hot on that drug test, it's a good chance you could possibly be getting kicked out of the Army. Last and final one is a DUI or DWI. That was also one of those that prior to 2010, if that happened, soldiers usually got reduced in rank down to an E1, extra duty, all that kind of fun stuff. But there's a lot of units I've been hearing from that they're having zero tolerance for that stuff anymore. And if you do that, you get caught drinking and driving, you get a DUI, DWI, or whatever type of thing, they're gonna lean more towards the side of, hey, we're kicking this guy out of the Army. It could, again, in that same kind of scenario, it could go either way, depending on your past history. Maybe if it was one screw up kind of a thing, you state your case well enough and they're like, okay, you made a mistake, we're still gonna reduce him in rank and everything, but maybe we're not gonna kick him out of the Army. But there has been a lot of soldiers I've talked to that they've said that no, we've got guys in our unit that they got kicked out of the Army for that stuff. It's not like it was before 2010. It can happen where they just get reduced in rank, but they could also lean the other direction and kick you out of the Army. So I wanna make sure you're successful, right? You do a lot of these things, right? You can convict a felony, domestic violence, have that kind of a charge type of thing. You get a DUI, test hot for drugs, those types of stuff. That could possibly ruin your Army career and lead to you getting kicked out of the Army. In the comment section down below, I wanna hear from some of my veterans, some of the people in the Army currently. What are some reasons you have seen people getting kicked out of the Army, or even just ruin their Army career? Maybe it wasn't something like this to where it resulted in them getting kicked out of the Army, but it definitely ruined their career to where they were not gonna be getting promoted anytime soon, probably ever, and they're pretty much forced to pretty much write out their contract and get out. So I wanna hear from you guys down in the comment section down below. If you have questions about things, right? You're like, hey, I'm curious. What if I did this? What if this happened, right? You can drop those in the comment section down below. If I get a chance and I have an answer for you, maybe I can give you an answer in the comment section, or maybe some other veterans can answer your questions. So let me know in the comment section down below. Thanks for joining me though in this video. Make sure to check out the link down in the description box. I got some cool notebooks. You gotta take a lot of notes in the Army, so you might as well have a fun notebook. I got other themes to it as well, so check those out in the link in the description box down below on Amazon. Thanks for watching. I'm Christopher Chaos. I'll see you next time. See ya. Don't go taking off just yet. I got this video right here that tells you about things you're not allowed to do in the United States Army. You should probably know about them so you don't do them. Go watch it.